Hey everybody, welcome to Stampin' with Melva. I'm Melva Peters and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in British Columbia, Canada. And you can find me online at stampingwithmelva.com. Now, I am trying to make sure I got an error before I went live, and now I'm not sure if I'm live, when I'm live in my Facebook group. Apologies. I always seem to have problems and it doesn't seem to be. It says I'm live. Oh, I am live. Okay, it's just got the wrong, hasn't got my face. So it'll eventually catch up, I assume, to my face. Anyway, we won't worry about that. We will continue on, and I'm going to switch over to my desktop momentarily anyway. All right, so I'm Melva Peters and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in British Columbia, Canada, and you can find me online at stampingwithmelva.com. Now, every Tuesday at 6:30 Pacific, I go live with a new sketch for you, but today I'm a little earlier than normal because I have a meeting tonight. So I thought I'd jump on and share the sketch. I'm going to do some paper piecing today. I love paper piecing, and one of the tricks to it is to find the stamp set that works best. You don't want something with an image that has tiny little pieces that you end up having to cut out. So I'm going to use the Gallery Blooms, and I can see my Facebook still hasn't switched over, but hopefully you can hear me, and we'll sort it all out. Anyway, so I'm using Gallery Blooms. There's a lovely flower on it. I think it's peonies. I'm not absolutely sure, but I'm going to say it's peonies, and that I think will work well for the paper piecing. All right, let me switch over to my desktop and we'll get started. Okay, so now that I'm on there, I'm just going to go and see. Okay, yep, all right, we got that going. I don't actually know if it's working on Facebook or not, but we'll see. We'll see in a bit. All right, so this is the sketch. It's going to go live on Instagram, Facebook, probably around 7 o'clock tonight, which is my normal post time for when I share my sketches. So if you miss any of the measurements as I go through, or you want to grab this image, you'll find it on Instagram and Facebook. So the card base is 5.5 by 8.5. You could also use 4.25 by 11. Layer 1, which is the black layer, is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. Layer 2, which is the white layer, is 3 3¾ by 5. And then the strip across the middle is 2 inches by 3 3/4. This gray piece is 2.5 by 4. And then I said 3/4 of an inch by 2 for the sentiment, but whatever works for your sentiment. I'm going to use a little bit narrower because when I created the sketch, I didn't know what I was going to use for the sentiment. And okay, maybe it's working, maybe it's not. Okay. All right, so that's the sketch, and you'll find it on, like I said, on Facebook and Instagram, probably around 7 o'clock tonight. So these are the two stamp sets that I'm going to use. So Gallery Blooms and Beautiful Motifs are part of the Beautiful Gallery suite of products. So I'm using this die that goes along with that. I'm not using the others, but these are the dies that go along with the Gallery Blooms. I love this frame, and I have created some cards. Hey Jane, welcome. Using this frame, but I just wanted to show you that today. So this is the die that I'm using just to cut out my piece, my stamped image. Put that away. The other stamp set that goes along with it, because there are no sentiments in the Gallery Bloom stamp set, is the Beautiful Motifs, and there are some absolutely stunning dies for this one, but we're not using them today. So I'm going to use the Celebrate stamp, but there's some great images. These images, I love to use them on the inside of my card, but great sentiments with this one. Okay, so let's get started. Let's see, I've got so a few other products that go with this suite. Some amazing designer series paper with some gorgeous scenes on one side, and then some just background images. So we're going to use that for the stamping, for the paper piecing. This is another one. This is my absolute favorite piece of the designer series paper, and I'm going to use the back side of it because it's just kind of a light Lost Lagoon, which is going to be the color. Okay, so what have I got here? I have got a piece of Lost Lagoon as my card base, so we'll start with that. So this is cut 5.5 by 8.5, and like I said, you could do it 4 1/4 by 11, or whichever way you want it to be, a booklet fold card or a tent fold card, but it's half a sheet of cardstock. So I'm going to grab my bone folder, and we'll fold into the mountain as always and give it a good burnish with the bone folder. Okay, so then I cut my layer number 2, which is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. I cut out of early espresso. And then this is basic beige, and I don't know that you can see that very well, but that's the Damask Patterns embossing folder, which is part of this suite. It's absolutely stunning, just very, very subtle. And so I'm going to use that. We're going to do some splattering and some stuff on it. So I'm not going to glue it down. And then this is my piece of designer series paper that's going to cross the middle, and then my layer number, whatever that is, layer number 4, and then my sentiment piece. I've just got a piece of that designer series paper. It's a little longer than I need. I'll trim it off, and then a piece for the inside of the card, 4 inches by 5 1/4. Okay, I just need to grab, there it is. I got one blending brush out, but I didn't grab 2. So I want to do a little bit of blending. Get these out of the way. I'm going to do some blending with, there you can see the pattern, the texture on this. I'm going to do some blending with my blending brush and basic beige. I find that it just brings out that pattern a little bit if you do that. So you can start to see. Now basic beige to me has a green tinge, so it works really well, I think, with Lost Lagoon and other greens. And more so the ink has a gray tinge, or a green tinge to it. Did I say gray? Yeah, green. The ink more so than the paper. But you can start to see that pattern nicely. It just brings out that pattern if you do some blending on it. Now I'm going to grab this is a crumb cake. We don't have basic beige Stampin' blends, so I'm just going to use a crumb cake Stampin' blend. Now I always, when I splatter, I always take it and put the brush end tip into the cap. I was on the incentive trip, and we had somebody, I can't remember who it was, that told us, Corey or Jill, that you really only need to do this. Now, I'm not very successful in getting that to work. So if you take it and just tap, that's supposedly what will work, but it's not working for me. It may be that this crumb cake is getting almost to the end of its life, but it works really well. So very gently, I am just taking and splattering. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that very well, but I'll hold it up. Now, just be very gentle with your tip, because you don't want to ruin it. And it's not, Stampin' Up! Doesn't recommend doing it this way, which is why they showed us the other way. But I don't seem to be able to. Maybe if I tap it, and it's going to make a noise. Tap it. No, not working real well for me. So I'm going to go back to my old splattering method. I'll have to do some playing with it. There. So got a little bit of a splatter on there just to make it look a little more vintagey. Okay, so let's bring our things. I've moved everything out of the way. So we're going to take some liquid glue. I've said this before, I always use liquid glue on the back of any of my embossed cardstock, because it gets into the nooks and crannies. So that piece can go on there, which will then go on the front of the card. Make sure my opening is going the right way. So I intentionally used a little bit smaller pieces of cardstock because I really wanted to be able to see the border around it because I love Lost Lagoon. Okay, so now let's move on to the paper piecing part of this. That's hard to say. So whenever I paper piece, I've got my piece of designer series paper, and that's what you piece on. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to stamp my image twice. I'm going to stamp it on basic white. This is quite a large image, so I'm going to stamp it onto basic white because we're going to cut this out. So I've got my lovely peonies. There we go. And then I'm going to stamp it again. On. And for this one, you really only need the parts that you're cutting out. So I'm going to just stamp those flowers like that. Okay, so the whole thing about paper piecing is to stamp on to something. And so I've got this pretty designer series paper, and I'm going to now just I've stamped my image, and I'm just going to take and cut around, and you don't have to go right exactly up to it, but I'm going to cut the flowers out. And I'm going to leave the leaves, if that makes sense. So I'm really just cutting around the flower itself and not the leaves. You could paper piece these leaves as well, but I'm not going to, including some of the little tiny ones. I'm just going to cut around. So I'm just kind of following the petals around. So there are some stamps that always call out to me for paper piecing. So there's some when you have some people where they've got clothing on, that often I think about paper piecing for those kinds of images. We recently had the umbrella days where that umbrella is a great image to paper piece. The one trick to paper piecing, at least in my opinion, is to not have an image that is too small. I did one a few years ago where it was a turtle, and the little I'll say squares. I'm not sure that they're actually squares, but the shapes on the back of a turtle in this particular stamp, I decided it would be really cool to paper piece, and it was, but oh my gosh, they were so tiny. So I suggest, especially if you have never done paper piecing or you're new to paper piecing, try and find an image. That's why I thought of these peonies from the beautiful gallery, because they're big enough. Now I'm going to take, since I've got my crumb cake, bit non-traditional, but I'm just going to take and color my leaves just because it goes nicely with the color combinations I've got going on my card. So I'm just going to take and just really quickly, I'm not blending these, I'm just adding some color to those pieces that I did not cut out and will not be covered over with the designer series paper that I cut out. Now I'm going to cut this out first using my die, and I'm just going to put a little piece of Post-it note tape on it to hold it in place. Move those out of the way. And bring my die cutting machine in. I don't have a very big space where I do my filming, so I'm always moving stuff out of the way. There we go. So we've got our platform 1, 2, 3. my cardstock sandwich. Let's just shift that a little bit. There we go. And then the other number 3, and we'll just run this through. I like to cut it out first because that way I'm not worried about going through so many layers. If you start to get your designer series paper onto it and you go through it with a die, it just is that much thicker. There. So we have our flower, and now I'm just going to take and use glue. You can use Stampin' Seal, but I'm just using, which flower is this? This is the front top one. Okay, there we go. Not putting too much glue on because it's gonna roughly in the middle. Like that. That's for my sentiment. Here's my piece. Okay, so I've got this piece. This is pretty stark if you look at my card with just the white. So we're gonna use some Lost Lagoon. And we're gonna use a blending brush, and we're just gonna add some Lost Lagoon. So I pick up some ink and I tap off, and then I'm just going to try and put it kind of in the middle without getting a big splodge of ink where you get a really dark. And you can just pick up some of the color that you've tapped off from your brush. I don't want to go really dark. I just want to have a little bit of color in behind my image like that. So I did get a little bit darker there, but that one might be covered up when I go to do my sentiment. All right, and so we'll put these on with dimensionals. Just checking to see if I've got comments that I'm missing. But not. Okay, there we go. I know this is kind of a little earlier than I normally go on. All right, so I've got dimensionals. So I'm just going to roughly put that in the center, and hopefully you can see that it's got a little bit of color behind, and that isn't quite so stark on my, as if it was white, or stark as it would be if it was white. There we go. So I've just glued that down. Now I've got this piece, I cut it to be 1/2 inch wide because my sentiment isn't very wide. And I'm going to stamp the Celebrate using the Tuxedo Black. Bit under there. Okay, I'm going to stamp it over a little bit because I think I want it to be just a little bit longer, because I've got a little bit of a dark spot there where I kind of. Okay. Let's see if we can cut this straightish. Sometimes I don't do very straight when I go to cut. So I'm trying only to put my, which kind of goes against my rule about putting a dimensional in the middle so it doesn't sag. But I want to kind of have it over top of that stem and roughly in the middle, and it's a little longer on this side, so we'll just take and trim that. There we go. Okay, now it needs, of course it needs some embellishments, and these are the, oh, they're very heavy. One thing to note, these are the pressed flower motifs that are part of the suite. They are very heavy, so I try not to use too many of them on a card, because they definitely will add weight to your card. So I will put my normal 3 on for this one because I really love them. But if you're going to mail the card, especially if you're mailing in Canada, You may find you have to put extra postage on. Okay, so we need to stamp something. Oh no, actually I cut a piece of somewhere. I cut a piece of designer series paper to go on the front of the card, and now it's gone. How is that possible? Oh, here it is. Ah. All right, so I cut a piece of that really pretty designer series paper, and we'll just take and put it on the inside of the card like that. So it's 1/2 inch. Usually when I go across the bottom, I use 3/4 inch, so a little bit wider, but when I go down the side, I just use 1/2 inch wide. But you can do it however it works for you. All right, that is my vintagey card using the Gallery Bloom stamp set and then other products from the beautiful Gallery suite, and doing some paper piecing with the gorgeous designer series paper. If you wanted to, you could put some Wink of Stella on those just to kind of give it a little bit of sparkle, but I think I'm just going to leave it as it is. There we go. All right. So again, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the card. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can reach out to me either through leave a comment on this video or reach out to me. My email and contact information is on my website. I will be back tomorrow again a little earlier because I have a meeting tomorrow night. So I will be live again around 2 or 2:30 tomorrow with another project for you.